we've got a very, very big topic to discuss as a brand new England manager. And who else to talk about it than a Chelsea fan? And you've seen Thomas Tuchel lift major silverware for your club. How does it feel to see Thomas Tuchel as England manager?
What a guy. I'm probably a lot more positive than I think a certain other Chelsea fan on this channel, that's for sure. It's going to be amazing, man. I love this guy so much. I think he is everything that England could have done or could have got, really. Like, he's the best possible candidate. If we couldn't get Pep Guardiola, he's probably the next best possible candidate we could have got. And I'm looking forward to seeing how things are going to be from January the 1st. I know he's not taking over in November. It gives him a nice amount of time as well to kind of study the players, see who's about. I'm looking forward to it. I really am.
Who are the connections? Because we were talking about Raheem Sterling. Obviously, he signed Raheem Sterling from Man City.
Yep.
He was a big advocate for Sterling. Obviously, not really part of the England setup at the moment, but that could change if Arsenal maybe win the league this season. What are the initial connections to Chelsea in terms of players? I talked to you off camera about Levi Colwill. Kind of knows him at least in the setup. Who else will he kind of know from English football?
It's funny because actually, I guess if you look at that Chelsea squad that he had when they won the Champions League, all those players, non-English included, really aren't at Chelsea anymore. And the others aren't necessarily playing too well. You got Mason Mount at Manchester United, injured all the time or hasn't really featured too often. Reece James at Chelsea, obviously he's been quite injury prone at the moment. Just getting him fit is the first step before even thinking about England. Ruben Loftus-Cheek saw a little bit of success under Thomas Tuchel. He's doing pretty well actually at AC Milan. We might see him maybe get a call up here or there. And so the connections that were at Chelsea aren't necessarily at the forefront of people's minds at the moment. Really, like if you look at that England squad now and the most recent call-ups, I know Lee Carsley's obviously picked a few players that were maybe unexpected, and maybe Thomas Tuchel might not, because obviously he wants to see a lot of different guys. Really, from that Chelsea squad right now, Levi Colwill, as you mentioned, Cole Palmer, who Tuchel had nothing to do with at Chelsea, that might be the kind of connections that we have possible for him at England. Like, I just don't really see. Like, I'd be shocked if you were to sit here right now and tell me that Mason Mount would be at the World Cup.
Oh God!
In America, I'd be quite shocked. Like, I don't know if that's going to happen.
No.
And so I think whilst yes, he does have these connections, I think it's a bit of a clean slate. And look, while people may say he does have that Chelsea connection, what he also would have been doing is looking at a lot of other Premier League teams he was coming up against. So when Chelsea played Liverpool, the numerous times they did under Tuchel, he'll know a lot about Alexander-Arnold, and he'll know a lot about Harry Kane, having managed him at Bayern Munich. So he does go in with some knowledge of the squad, and I think over the next couple of months as well, he'll be attending a lot of games too, I reckon. Yeah,
Harry Kane's the big one. He scored, 45 and 46 for Tuchel. Massive fan of him. I think Harry Kane always talks about how well he got coached by Thomas Tuchel. What do you make of the appointment, mate?
I'm of the belief that it's the best possible appointment that England could have made. I look at Thomas Tuchel, and I almost feel like there's like this blemish on his name whenever we talk about him. And I was speaking to this with a few other people, and we were thinking, is it maybe because he had a few sackings on his resume, perhaps? Is it maybe the style of play that people don't always get behind, perhaps? And maybe it's also the fact that it's always attributed with Tuchel that he's not really a long-term sustainable manager. But I also think if you look at every circumstance that he's kind of had at several clubs, whether it was Dortmund, PSG, obviously Chelsea, now Bayern most recently, I feel like there's context to be applied for why each one of those situations kind of ended the way it did, and maybe didn't end the most amicably in each case. But I look at what England need and how far England have kind of come to this point with this group of players and what they kind of need to take the next step. I think it's a winner. I think it's a guy who comes in with bags of experience, bags of charisma, bags of personality. You need to have personality to be able to manage this group. We always talk about international football. Maybe it's not so much the tactical side of things that kind of count, rather than building a platform, building a kind of cohesive group that when it's kind of time to play against the bigger nations can kind of come together and perform. I think Thomas Tuchel has shown numerous times throughout his career, especially in knockout football, that for me, bar maybe you could say Pep Guardiola and Nationality, he's as good as it gets in that kind of format.
Of course he is. He's top, there's an argument he's top 5 managers in world football. Maybe he's the third best behind Jurgen Klopp. I know he's not managing at the moment, and Pep Guardiola. The big question is style of football. Now, I'm going to be a little bit of a devil's advocate here in terms of I saw City play Chelsea in the Champions League final. He played a back 5. It was a very utilitarian approach because he came in midway through the season and got you to the Champions League final, and you obviously won it. But my only issue is that the FA had a big remit in the last 10 years from the under-17s, the under-19s, 21s. Obviously, look at Lee Carsley, what he's doing as well, to play an expansive brand of football, to control football matches Is Thomas Tuchel right for that philosophical approach? It feels to me like it's been disregarded.
I think Thomas Tuchel, I think a lot of people, right, when they think about Thomas Tuchel, they think Chelsea Champions League final or Chelsea's like squad. And yes, they played a back three. At times they would be defensive, but also that's partially what knockout football is. Not a lot of teams that go on to win international tournaments are crazy attacking wise and scoring 7 goals here and there. Like, okay, Spain in the Euros actually played quite a really nice style of football attacking wise. And that was also because Lamine Yamal was on incredible form and still is. And Williams was obviously doing things on the other wing as well. They were really, really impressive. But think back to France's wins recently under
You look at Argentina with Scaloni.
Exactly.
It's a defensive mindset. Yeah.
In France, people do not like Deschamps because he plays a boring style of football and is defensive. He's also won the World Cup, right? Like he's done a pretty good job. He's made it to the World Cup final again against Argentina, where they went on to lose. Unfortunately for them. And so, look, yes, Tuchel might have a defensive style at games when they need to be, but Tuchel can also play an expansive style of football if they want to. Like, people keep talking about, like, Tuchel, he's going to play 3 at the back. I've already seen, like, mock-ups of what the England's going to be.
Can you remember a team, bar Chelsea, that Tuchel coached that played 3 at the back? Because he didn't play...
That's true.
At PSG, he wasn't playing a 3 at the back. At Dortmund, he was versatile. At Bayern, he wasn't playing 3 at the back. I think the thing with Tuchel, right, and one of the best attributes about him is he's a versatile manager.
100%.
I think he acclimatizes to the players and to the squad that he has at hand. Like at PSG and at Dortmund, he was known. In fact, he kind of burst onto the scene as a guy who was playing free-flowing attacking football with Dembele and Aubameyang, Neymar, Mbappe, and Di Maria. And he came to Chelsea, a team that we all looked at and said, okay, they got Werner, they got Havertz, they got they're not the most blessed attacking wise, but look at the defensive prowess that they have. They have N'Golo Kante in the midfield.
Yeah.
Who's the ultimate in terms of breaking up play and just kind of getting it started. He kind of built a team around that. Yeah, absolutely. So I think that's the thing with Tuchel. But because Chelsea was in the Premier League and we all saw it on our TV screens every single week, that's what we attribute 100%.
To him. And what's going to be interesting, like genuinely, if you're Tuchel right now, he must look at that squad and go, oh my God.
Yeah.
Like every position is incredible. Like people might argue goalkeeper could be a little bit of an interesting one for him with what he'll do with like Pickford or Henderson. But he won the league with Mendy, who was much more like a shot stopper rather than like a guy that was playing the ball with his feet.
Does Tuchel win England the Euros against Spain if he was the manager in July? Be honest.
Why not?
Does he though?
Well, I think he very well could have.
Doesn't he sacrifice the ball and De La Fuente still gets Rodri on the balls with Mendy on the ball? These guys. Does it change anything in that regard? Because the only thing I'm going to say, as someone that obviously loves England massively, is an England fan through and through. Again, it's that classic thing with England. We give up possession in midfield. We don't have a deep line playmaker. The kind of Adam Wharton situation, we never kind of use someone like that, for example, in the Euros. I'm not saying that was the answer, of course not. But we don't have that approach. And it still remains to be seen if Thomas Tuchel will give us any more possession in big moments against these big sides.
One thing about Thomas Tuchel, I think, when you talk about that deep-lying midfielder, which, by the way, I think in international football, no matter who you are, you look at the most of the international winning teams, whether it's Italy with Pirlo, whether it's Italy with Verratti and Jorginho later on, you look at Spain with Zubimendi, they all prioritize a guy who can keep onto the ball. That's international football. And when I look at Thomas Tuchel's experience at every single club he's been at, he's always prioritized that kind of player. At Dortmund, it was Julian Weigl. At Chelsea, Jorginho, who was completely out of the fold under Frank Lampard, was reintroduced. At PSG, it was Marco Verratti. Even with Bayern Munich, he's the one that introduced Pavlovic into the team. So for me, I don't look at a guy who's going to come into England and he's going to start a double pivot of Bellingham and Rice. I think he's going to look at an Adam Wharton. He's going to look at a Kobe. He might even continue looking at an what's his name, Angel Gomez. I think he's going to prioritize that kind of midfielder. And that's something, like you say, that England really haven't prioritized for God knows how long. They had Michael Carrick at their disposal and never used him. That's the kind of profile that England have kind of been missing.
That's very, very interesting. What about the PR aspect of it? Because, look, this isn't about... it's not about... Well, we have to talk about it. We do have to talk about it. It is a topic. I don't even necessarily sit on the side of what I'm going to say now. But there are a massive swathe of England fans that are going to have issues about a German managing the England national side for obvious reasons, with certain chants that get sung at certain games. Obviously, I'm not part of that. Of course, the 1966 World Cup finals of this kind of rivalry. Is it an issue? And the reason it could be on a sporting level is because if England lose qualifying games for the World Cup, if England lose a group game in America in the World Cup itself, the amount of pressure that gets put on someone that isn't an English manager, I think it translates massively. Gareth Southgate was able to magnetise England fans in the World Cup in 2018 because he was in England. He played for England. The dreams of Euro 96 and so many other examples for Gareth Southgate kind of emulated from him. And now we're in a situation where Thomas Tuchel, He never played in England.
I
Is
mean,
the German thing an issue?
genuinely for me, and like, I don't know if it is partially because I'm half Algerian. My dad's, says Leah's over here as well. My dad wasn't born in England. He's born in Algeria, came over. So like, maybe it's a little bit different on that side for the way I look at things. However, if England are winning games, it doesn't matter. No one says anything. If England lose a game, and that's the thing that's being brought up, that's mad to me. Like, if England lose a game, say England get knocked out of the World Cup at the quarterfinals in America in a couple of years' time, and they've been knocked out by Denmark, for instance, right? Or it doesn't matter who, France, whatever. The talking point, really, like to the crux of it, shouldn't be about. It would be knocked out because he's German. That's why. It should be about what's happened in the game.
To be fair, England have history of that, though. Huh? I mean, I can't lie.
No.
Like, we've looked at the past few tournaments when it's a loss. Oh, it's Sterling, it's Bukayo Saka.
Yes.
So to play devil's advocate, it's not too dissimilar to what we've seen in the last few tournaments.
But again, it's wrong. Like
1,000%. Yeah, that's
the whole point should be about like, okay, is it because of the tactical side that we were doing? Did a certain injury, whatever it might have been? Like that's the talking point. I just think it's like such a fake narrative and such a boring narrative. If Thomas Tuchel won England the World Cup, no one will be sitting there the day after going, like, refusing to celebrate because, oh God, Tuchel's the one that won it. God, England won the World Cup for the first time since '66. Right.
But the issue is there's a massive amount of probability around the fact that England aren't going to win the World Cup. Let's be completely real. As much as I want to believe,
even more nations now as well.
Yeah, the German, the Brazilians, they're not doing very well. Brazil, of course, but Argentina, they've got so much more experience of winning things than England.
But
it's not even about him being German. It's that we've potentially thrown away 8 years of goodwill of an English manager succeeding, because Southgate did succeed on many levels, getting England back to a final for the first time in over 50 years. To throw it away, it's not even about him being German, but to throw it away and kind of throw away the English managerial football pyramid for the sake of short-termism. That'll be a fundamental issue in this debate.
But genuinely, who else? Like, for instance, right? If you take away everyone's nationalities, no one's from a nation, we're all from the earth. That's it. That's your nation. You're Earth, I'm Earth. Thomas Tuchel, Earth, right? The list is in front of you of available managers. Frank Lampard, Terzic, who's at Dortmund, Thomas Tuchel, Pep Guardiola said, I might come, I also might sign a year extension at Man City. Yeah. And you go, okay, you know what? The best manager is probably Thomas Tuchel there.
Of course, that's unquestionable. It.
Yeah. Like, it would have been, you would have been putting England giving England a worse chance of going on to win the World Cup by picking any other manager that wasn't Tuchel.
1,000%. I look at it in a way more practical way, and I understand football tribalism is completely different. You can't compare it to real life events. But I would just think that if you were applying for a job and you were far more overqualified than every other candidate, you were far more overskilled than every other candidate, you had far more experience than every other candidate, and you applied for the same job as everyone else, and you were turned down, and the only reason was you're German and they're not, you'd think this is it would never happen in real life. I understand that in football you bring in tribalism and stuff like that, but at the end of the day, as harrowing as it might sound, it is a business. It is a results kind of business. Who will give England the best chance to win football games on the biggest stage?
We gave Southgate 8 years, which is a very long amount of time. Very, very long.
Well, I wouldn't argue too long.
It was way too long. So, but what I'm trying to say is there's a philosophical approach with the FA in the last 8 years. We're going to give this England manager who's got his feel-good factor, nowhere near good enough to be managing some of the caliber players that he did. We give him 8 years for this kind of long-term approach to build up. He obviously managed the under-21s, etc. And now to just go to short-termism. All I'm saying is Eddie Howe might not be the right fit, or Graham Potter. We can definitely argue that. They're not world-class managers in the same way Tuchel is. Of course not. But they could have been the manager for the Euros after, for the World Cup after.
But there are bigger issues to that. Like, for instance, like, I agree. If it wasn't going to be Eddie Howe, if you're wanting like an English manager, if it wasn't going to be Eddie Howe, I don't really think any other manager deserved to have that kind of...
I would agree.
The experience you mentioned before with Tuchel, like knockout football and showing how great he is at it. Even at Bayern last year, and people complaining about him, he still got them to the semi-finals of the
They were seconds away from the final, by the way.
Literally, literally. And then like people want to go on and complain about like, oh, it's not an English man. There are much bigger issues around English like coaching systems and how to become a manager in England. Like, it costs the average person £15,000 to get your licenses. And that's if you pass with them every single time. You fail one of them, you got them to spend another amount of money to try and do it again.
I even look past that. Like, I completely hear you, but that's a completely bigger subject. But I even look at the ones who do have their licenses. Like, and you know what? The counterpoint here is, right, when you look at Argentina, they won the World Cup with Scaloni, who is hardly a world-established manager, especially before he joined Argentina. You look at De La Fuente, who actually has a similar career path to Lee Carsley and Gareth Southgate. So I do kind of hear it from that regard. But when I look at I guess the quality of the English managers around the game, I don't think any of them can feel too hard done by that. They've decided to go for a bigger name and a much more experienced name at that as well.
100%. And it's also situational, right? Like, for instance, right now in the case of England right now is like the talent level as the nation in terms of like rankings, really, there's only maybe a couple of teams that are higher than England.
I was going to say, Buvey, I actually disagree when you say, like, when I look at England, I don't think they're going to win the World Cup, or like, I don't think it's realistic. I look around international football right now, and player for player, in terms of the actual squad and the dearth of options that England have to call upon, how many national teams can you realistically say definitely have better talent pools than them? I would say France. Bar France,
that's it.
Like, you could Portugal on paper, they have a lot of talented players, but they have a lot of similar issues that England have. I think the rest of them, I think you should be looking at England in terms of talent, not in terms of how they've performed, experience, but I think talent-wise, they can compete with the best.
History matters to me in football. History and tradition, and not tradition, history and kind of patterns. And
but what is England's history? Losing.
Yeah, exactly. England have the biggest weight of expectation of any establishment in football. It's bigger than Man United's expectation of getting back to winning titles.
Sure. I would say Brazil, maybe. But Brazil got
arguably, of course, there's more. Obviously, that's a way bigger expectation. But in terms of maybe in European football, England failure is systemic. And all I'm going to say is what happened with Capello in 2010. Why don't we talk about that? Obviously, there are a couple of examples of foreign managers managing England. Obviously, the late Sven-Göran Eriksson and Capello. Obviously, you're hoping it goes more towards Sven, where there were lots of good things with Sven. A couple of penalty misses, obviously, in the quarterfinals of Euros and World Cups. I'm hoping, I'm praying it doesn't end up like Capello, where it was such a sour taste in our mouths.
But if you think about that Capello, oh God, we've heard it a million times from that era of footballers talking about like the rivalry in the camp between Liverpool players and Man United. That's gone right now. And like, what we've got to make sure that Tuchel and the guys, and I think they will.
Well, it's gone because United are rubbish. So there is no rivalry. they're beefing with bloody Ivan Toney.
I think Chelsea are rubbish too. It helps.
I think what will also, but I do think that like. That's something that Tuchel does need to make sure that keeps going on, like the morale side, like making it good, like everyone enjoying coming to England. But that I think was a huge issue then, like played a massive part of it. And also like we got into, and what I don't think Tuchel will do, which is part of what was the issue then as well. Players weren't in the right positions at times. Like they were kind of slotted in at the wrong moments. Tactically at times, maybe we weren't being the smartest.
That 2010 team as well too. Look, we talk about the golden generation. I think 2006 for sure was the height of the golden generation. But you look at the 2010 team. First of all, Rio didn't travel. And you're looking at Matthew Upson, you're looking at Gareth Barry. No disrespect to any of these guys, by the way. But Lee King didn't even, he couldn't even play. You're looking at around the team. You're looking at Aaron Lennon, Emil Heskey was still starting for England. Robert Green and then David James. Even it wasn't the peak of the golden generation.
You're right.
So yes, it was bad, but Fabio Capello wasn't dealing with peak Gerrard, peak Lampard. I think Rooney was the only one really in the smack dab of his prime at that point.
Yeah, 100%. Let's conclude. Is it the right pick? From you lads, I'm guessing
100%.
You have turned me around a little bit. It's about a 51% majority decision. You've just got me over the edge. Will England win the World Cup? That's the big question. Do you think England will win the World Cup?
I think England are giving themselves the best opportunity to win the World Cup. Yes. Would I go out there? Like I've said it every year. I've said England will win the World Cup. It's fun.
No,
it's fun to do it.
Yeah.
But I think this decision gives them the best opportunity to do it. Like imagine this England team was a Premier League team, right? And the nations again didn't matter. They have hired a manager that gives them one of the best opportunities to win the Premier League. Like that's the way to look at it.
Or the Champions League.
Yeah, the Champions League, whatever it might be. Yeah,
it's a great
Champions League is a good way
to do it.
Great
shout. There must be at least 8 world-class players in that starting level.
That starting lineup under Thomas Tuchel is going to be like incredible. What he does with, say, Trent's going to be so interesting. The wingers, it's going to be all really, really interesting.
It is exciting.
It is very, very good.
I would say this, right? Like I'm looking at this as an outsider looking in. I don't have like a dog in this race here, right? But I've been of the opinion, and this might be hindsight to a lot of people, that every time England go to a tournament under Gareth Southgate, I've personally never believed they're getting over the line. I just always felt the minute he meets a manager that's at his level or better, or the minute he meets a team that has a fully functional midfield over his, England will get found out. And I've been proven right every single time. Looking at how Thomas Tuchel has shown throughout his career, he's able to, first of all, nullify opposition's best players. He's done that so many times. And how he is able to manage these single knockout ties. 1 week just focusing about one opposition. I look at England now and they are infinitely more interesting, and they are now infinitely more, for me, a threat when it comes to the likes of France, Italy, Germany, Spain, etc., etc.
100%. I think it won't take long for England fans who are maybe a bit more on the edge to be convinced by him. Like, you got to remember, when he joined Chelsea, He took over from Frank Lampard, who Chelsea fans were over the moon about, loved him, were devastated he went. People like Thomas Tuchel came in, and people thought, "Oh, who is this guy?" And within a couple of months, every Chelsea fan was in awe of him.
He's
and
world
loving
class.
him.
He's better than if you're sat there at home listening. You're saying Arteta's better than him, or even Unai Emery. He's miles above both. If you win a Champions League, you get put in a very special category, very rare category of current managers managing in the game. An unbelievable assignment and an appointment. And as far as Lee Carsey's concerned, I'm so glad he's leaving. So let's be real. We have
You're
to celebrate
Lee Carsey.
Yeah, I hope the door doesn't hit him on the way out.
He's going back to the under
Creepy
21s.
dude, man. I'm so glad he's out of there.